Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final week of the Digital Festival Hounslow. My name's Mark Lumley, and I'm the Director of Digital and IT for the London Borough of Hounslow. And I'm really pleased to be introducing this session this afternoon, and I'll hand over to Nigel in just a moment or two. But it's really good that we've got a local company coming and joining us on this digital journey with us. Often when it comes to sort of digital and data and information, we talk about and we think about our individuals and people. So it's really nice that we've got something a little bit different this afternoon as part of the session. And we're talking about managing your home in the digital age. Often one of the most stressful things is moving home. So anything we can do to find out better information about the properties and the place, I think is something that we're very interested in hearing this afternoon. So really pleased to have Nigel with us this afternoon. And so without further ado, I'll shut up talking and hand over to Nigel for the presentation. If you've got any questions, do let us know. Nigel, I'll hand over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for the invite to take part in the festival. I was very excited to see it. As you said, Mark, our homes are one of those areas where this strange digital revolution that's affecting so much of our life is starting to hit home. So I'm going to go through our thoughts on this today, and I'm going to touch on how we think that impacts the council and things like that. So without further ado, I'm going to dive into the slides. I'm just going to make sure that you're all seeing the slide before I dive in. Are you seeing a green slide with Chimni on there? Good. Right. I will fire away now. There will be people monitoring the questions. So if you do have a question, feel free to stick it in the chat, and Chris and Mark and the Hounslow guys have said they'll interrupt and throw the questions in, which would be great. So if you ask a question, I get to drink coffee. So so feel free to throw questions in, and we'll see if we've got the answers. So let's dive into this strange digital world. Hopefully, I will be providing thoughts about the challenges and opportunities around a home for all different kinds of resident, whether you own your home, you lease your home, you're a social renter, you're a private renter. Hopefully there's bits of this for everyone in there, because very often the home tech affects people differently. So hopefully we have a nice broad message. And I want to talk about our thoughts on digital data in general. So for the last few years, you'll probably all be aware that there's been lots of talk in the press about personal data. Who owns my personal data? Who can access it? Things like that. And these are all the right questions we've been asking, particularly with the rise of social media. So all these questions: can I stop other people having my data? Can I commercialize it myself? All great questions, but all very much focused on personal data, the stuff that belongs to us individually. And we're starting to ask the same questions about our homes. So because for most of us, a home is the most important thing around us in our life, whether we rent it or we own it. It's where we live, it's where all our precious items are, it's where our families are. So we're beginning to ask the same question about this digital revolution. What does it mean for where I live? What does it mean for my home? How I manage it, how I run it, who can access it, and all those kind of questions. So just clicking on. I'm just waiting for my screen to rest. There we go. You will know that our homes are full of information. Our council tax, our utility bills, certificates. Oh, I've just lost my slides there. I'll open them back up again.
Yeah, we seem to have frozen as well, Nigel.
Well, I'll just open them up again, and we'll do it again. There it is. Look at this. It's always great when someone who claims to know about digital technology starts to fail with their digital technology in front of people. It's a nice humbling moment. So,
well, they often say, don't they, that never work with children, animals, and digital and IT. So yeah, we're proving that. We're proving that today, aren't we?
Exactly. Children, animals, and PowerPoint are the three never works with. Yeah. Right, it tells me it's opening up again. Right.
There we go.
So that's on my screen, Nigel. So
Ah.
Yeah.
so if you let me know when you want to advance.
Yeah, so if we go to the next slide, if you go down the build. Although mine is now open, so it might be easy just to give it one more try on mine. Can we do that?
Did you share your screen? Sorry.
Okay. Right, I'm going to share my screen one more time. Right. There we go. So we talked about personal data, and we talked about all the paperwork that we have and the data we have for our home.
Under this digital festival, in order that we can further enhance what we do and build the skills and capabilities in our organisation.
Is that your audio?
With our residents at the forefront of our mind. So very much enjoy the next month of.
That sounds like the chief exec is
it does.
The launch. It sounds like he's infiltrating your session this afternoon. That's
I know. There we go. So we had got to this point with just listing out all of the types of data we have in our home, the types of documents and things, and of course for most of us, for the last for a number of years, the way we have managed data looks like this. And I think whether it's a kitchen drawer or a filing cabinet in a spare bedroom, for a long time, the way we've managed all of those things has been pretty much paper based. And what you'll probably have found if you've done anything in your house that involved dealing with the council or with lawyers or any other people just recently, is that most people have kind of leapt from this into what we're calling the kind of the PDF age. So if you've bought and sold a property, your email inbox gets absolutely filled with PDFs that you're meant to do something with, and most of us have tried doing something with a Dropbox or a Google account to kind of file it. And we're just moving into an area now that is kind of chaotic, where there's hundreds of apps appearing that can do all sorts of clever things to tidy up our personal data. And we've been having a little look at this, and in Chimni we have this idea that when do we care about information about our home? And we have this idea that there's points in the life cycle of moving into a home and moving out of it and doing it up where we care lots about the data. And it's when you buy or rent or you move, it's when you do some work on it, whether it's extending or decorating. It's when there's what we call, unfortunately, a catastrophe. You flood yourself, you have a fire or something. And of course, it's when you back round full circle, you sell and move again. And the markets, there's loads of apps all kind of appearing to help you in each of those worlds. And it's the same thing in the troughs. We talk about these dips where you're theoretically not that interested in data and managing your home, but actually increasingly there are apps and services arriving which help you do all those things. And we'll talk about local government and community in just a moment, and even pleasure. I worked out the other day, I've got 3 apps on my phone which are about gardening. Which is rather sad. Apologies for that, but they're actually rather good. So if anyone wants to know which they are, but the idea is that there's this kind of cacophony of apps and services building up around our home, all trying to help us do a little thing. And what we've started to spot is also that people are starting to get fatigue around filling more and more of these things in. Every time you want to set up a new app and service, you get another one of these things to fill in. And so that's just part of our modern life. And the thing we would flag up is, at the moment, none of these apps share data. Oops, have I just... Did that just come off? Aha. Can you see that again? Is that sharing?
Not right now.
Okay. This is like wrangling There we go. How about now?
Yeah, it's coming up.
There we go. Yeah, so none of these apps share data. There's no consistency in the way they talk about our homes. There's no cumulative record being built up that we can use. Most of the information is kind of attached to us as a person and not as a property. And you can't transfer data between the apps. I'll talk more about why that's important in just a minute. Now, the same thing applies to the government and the public sector. So when we line up the organisations that we deal with as a homeowner, if you happen to own your home, obviously the land registry is one of those. The council is obviously hugely important, whether it's housing or planning or rubbish and parking. There's other bodies like the Ordnance Survey and the Post Office who deal with the addresses. There's utilities and other professionals like architects and lawyers. And actually, the same thing's been happening over the last 20 years in all of those organisations. So, 30 years ago, in the paper era, all of those organisations also had big piles of paper piled up everywhere. So if you wanted anything, you had to get somebody to go and look through a filing cabinet. And none of those organisations could swap information easily without copying it and passing over paper. So there wasn't much interaction between them in terms of data level. 20 years ago, there was the first digital era, and what we saw then was all those organizations build databases that in the first kind of era of computing. So lots and lots of organizations we deal with have got great big old-fashioned data systems that don't talk to each other and don't swap data particularly easily. But what's happening now, and the reason we wanted to do this session, is something really exciting is beginning to happen, and that is all the organisations we deal with who live around our home are doing something really exciting, and we're beginning to see all these organisations start to convert these old systems that didn't talk to each other into open data systems that are increasingly sharing data formats to a standardised setup. And the central government is pushing very hard that industries and organisations should have this kind of second digital era. And the exciting thing about this is, for the first time, it means that data can be shared much easily across these different organisations, and even within organisations. We all know organisations that have got multiple different systems that don't connect. And obviously in this new era, it means that information about our homes can be shared much more easily with the relevant permissions, obviously. It also means that services like the council can innovate. So, over the next 10 years, we're really excited to see what the local council world does in terms of using new data services to innovate and do exciting things. It means services can be developed between organisations, again, with the right permissions to use your information. If data is open and standardised, it means we're going to see lots more interesting things appearing as organisations work out how, when and where to share data. And some of those organisations might be commercial, and we'll talk in a minute about more commercial organisations who are doing interesting things. So this new digital era is very exciting because it means that lots of organisations are able to do things with cumulative data. Some people may find this alarming, and so we would put our hands up and say, it can seem scary, as long as, but we have to remember that one of the big focuses of all these organisations is about permissions and data security. So the big question is, how do we do this in a way that benefits us as residents and homeowners, etc. And so we like to put the home in the middle of this new kind of era. And we sometimes, when we're being grandiose, talk about the home as a data hub in this new interconnected world of data. But it's a very exciting kind of question. What does this mean? What are the opportunities does this offer for the organisations that serve us as homeowners to do different things better, which is great, and also as homeowners? The big, great question. What does it mean that we can be doing as homeowners to access data better and do new things? And we have to reflect that as homeowners, it's going to be a busy couple of decades coming up, because the government is starting to kind of pose some significant challenges for us in a good way. There is the whole refitting for net zero over the next few years. As homeowners, as residents, as renters, we're going to have to take part communally as a country to make sure our housing stock is improved over time to meet the obligations that we've agreed to as a country under the kind of global net zero world. The smart home tech is arriving amazing opportunities, difficult challenges for security. Renewables, we'll have new energy sources, smart, like the Internet of Things, sensors around our homes, more recycling stuff, and also some negatives, some property fraud. How do we use these new systems to combat property fraud? So as homeowners, there's lots of noise around us about how we need to change, we need to do things differently, and the data that sits behind it and the data held in all those organisations is going to be one of the tools we will use to make good decisions about how we play as residents, as members of the community, and as council taxpayers. So it's an exciting time, but with lots of challenges. And so we're saying that question we asked about personal data at the beginning, we should also be asking about our homes. Who owns data about our homes? Who can access that data? How can I access it? Am I exposed to fraud? These are all really good questions that unfortunately we're going to have to think about in this new digital era for our homes. Can I store it? And what new services can I get because of all this amazing new data? And so what I've done is I've broken out this world into roughly kind of 3 areas: the past, the present, and the future. And what I mean by that is we're going to look at, archive stuff. Who's got information from the past about my home? What can I do now in the present? And what should I worry about or be excited about in this future world? So let's just go through those things. So the past question: who's got records about my home? We look at, as an organisation, we look at what the land registry have got, if you own your home, what the council have got, utilities, and also some fun stuff. Some of this stuff is serious and kind of legal and sensible, and I also included some of the kind of entertainment stuff where people have started to look at archives. So I'll touch on some of those as we go. For those of you lucky enough to own a home, you'll know that in the past there was literally a paper deed for anyone who owned a home. They were got rid of 10 years ago. The government decided we didn't need them all, and the land registry went into one of those kind of old-fashioned database systems that I talked about earlier on. So the land registry has got lots of information about our home, and interestingly, we did some research, and something like 95% of people who buy and sell a property never go and check afterwards that their property is registered properly in the land registry. We always assume our lawyer's done it. And one of the things we recommend to people is spend the £3. You can go onto this site, and I'll make all these web addresses available in a document at the end. You can go onto this website and just check that your lawyer did their job. You can search for your property info. It will take you to here, and you type it in, and it will bring you up your title plan. And you'll hear a lot in the press at the moment about how the buying and selling industry, especially estate agents and conveyancers, are desperate for people to do more work up front before they sell their home. And there's a phrase of upfront information being bandied around a lot because of the backlog in the conveyancing world. And one of the key bits of upfront information they always ask you to get is your title plan and title number and title plan from this site. So it's always a useful thing to go in here, check it, download the PDF for £3 and read it. Just make sure it says what you think it's meant to say, because something like 20% of the problems with house sales come because when the lawyers and the conveyancers eventually get to go and look at this document, it doesn't say what it's meant to say. So big recommendation, go and look at the land registry. Council, we're going to talk about the council a couple of times. We're big fans of going and having a look in the planning records. The councils offer great planning records. So this is Hounslow. Go and have a play. Log in, go and search for your home or your street in the planning records. It's there. This is your information made available by the council to you. And go into the planning search, put in a postcode or your address and see what comes up. It's part of the fun of this stuff all being available online. And as I say, these are your records made by public bodies like the council. We encourage this world to go and have a look. Postcode search, and it's nice to use. We'd also, in part of this kind of theme about making sure you know enough about not just your home, but also the way that other organisations talk about your home. Go and check out your council tax band on the government site. There's a site there that lets you go and search for your home. Go and look at here is the valuation office website. So you can go and search by postcode, and you can find your home on there, and it will tell you your tax band and a local authority number. And this is just useful information to have. As the world becomes more digital, more and more organisations are going to be using this information to do things in and around your home. And our thoughts are always that homeowners should at least have all this information to hand. So that's where the value and the council tax band comes from the valuation office, and is there for you to go and play with. Carrying on that, I don't live in a historic house, but around Hounslow there's lots of people who live in a listed property of some form. It's also, if you're interested in the fun of it, go and have a look at Historic England. You can go and search the listed website to show you all the listed properties around your home, in the streets where you live, and it's just good fun. They have nice data on all the property, so go revel around some of the lovely houses around Hounslow. And on top of this, there is, again, I don't live in a listed house, and I don't live in one with a blue plaque, but there's also websites for homes that have got blue plaques to explain who lived there and what the importance is. And it's open data, and it's free to use, and it's good fun. And there's also some history groups. We would recommend, if you're interested in longer term history about your street or your home, around Hounslow, there's some amazing history groups starting to use the web as a tool to disseminate their work. And Chimney's involved in 2 or 3 of these, but there's lots more around Hounslow doing really good fun and collating lovely old photos and old maps and doing some really interesting fun. So if you're interested, go and find your history group. So that was a combination of looking at the past, of the sensible stuff as well as the fun stuff. If we just get to the present, similar kind of groups, when people talk about what should we be doing right now, again, our mantra is always sign up for the council services. It's always a good start. Make sure you've got your account live and with the council services. There's me in London Borough Hounslow. It's kind of like a basic point. And one of the numbers, once you sign up for council services, that you'll see all the time is this UPRN number. Now, the government is about to have a real push on making this number central to the way lots of the services around our homes are delivered. And the way to think about this is a little bit like your national insurance number, which is your personal ID number in government services. The UPRN number is a little bit like a national insurance number for your house. It's on lots of the stuff you get from the council. It's a very useful number to have already, and it's going to get increasingly useful as this digital era progresses, because the government wants the land registry to use it and any other service provider. So you should know the UPRN for your home. If you're a real data nut, there's also a USRN, which is for your street. There's an MPAN number for your electric meter, but you have to be a real kind of a data aficionado to go chasing after those. But most of us should be at least know the number of our home from that. And the organisations that are pushing the UPRN include the Ordnance Survey, the Local Government Association, and GeoPlace, which is this logo up on the top left. This is the organisation specifically set up to get people to know about it. And they've got this great new website, the Find My Address, which will tell you your UPRN. So this is an address in Chiswick. There it is. I used to live there, actually. I think we chose that one as an old home I used to live in. So apologies if you now live in 32 Duke Road. But I've got some nice old photos of the house if you want them. So the UPRN number and the websites that are starting to be built by GeoPlace and Ordnance Survey are a great resource just for getting your records straight. Things like certificates, where what you'll discover owning or at least running and managing a property is that increasingly in this digital age, the government is looking to make sure that various aspects of your home are properly certified so that work is done properly, etc. And there's various organisations who have websites that store those certificates. This primarily becomes important if you want to buy and sell a property, or if you want to remortgage. But it's good to know that they're out there. So the EPC, the Energy Performance Certificate, is a key one, and there's a website where those are managed, and you can go and find them and print them off, and it tells you interesting things about your home. Now, historically, most homeowners didn't really think about these things like energy ratings, and there weren't much you could do about it, and the information wasn't particularly well made available. In this new digital world, more and more information is being made available about how our homes are certified, and also there's more and more great advice about how we can improve things. And you'll see in the future this is going to be more and more of a thing, particularly as I mentioned, those net zero obligations. And part of us knowing as residents how to manage our homes in this net zero world is having the information. And so the UPC is kind of part one of knowing that. And then there's other organisations popping up. So Trustmark is a really important one. This is a government system for doing a number of things. It certifies people who might want to work on your home to make sure they've got the right qualifications. But also it's the place where all the certificates will eventually be registered. So if you've had new windows where you live, there'll be a Windows certificate. If you've had work on the electricity, there'll be the electricity certificate. So any kind of major certificate that supports the quality of the work you've had done is stored on either Trustmark or one of the related websites. And it's good to know where those certificates are, because they are the means by which your home shows that you're participating in the kind of net zero world, and you get asked them by mortgage companies and by lawyers if and when you sell. So we're big fans of Trustmark. Utilities. So we've been observing what the utilities have been doing on the web over the last few years, and we think there's a subtle shift, and it's really interesting as homeowners. When utilities first launched all their websites, I think it was pretty fair to say that the major focus of what they did was actually about cost saving for the utility. It was about not having to print bills, sell bills. It was about being able to get information better to consumers, but it was very much a kind of a functional thing. We're beginning now to see a shift, which is really interesting, and it's a shift into helping us as homeowners think about our obligations in this new net zero targeted world, think about our obligations to reduce our energy footprints. And so it's a really interesting shift in the way that utilities are using their web services, and we encourage people to kind of spend some time on their utility website and see what's available. And there's also, as some of you will know, you've probably got some of the tech installed. And now we're not making recommendations on one versus another, or whether you should or you shouldn't have one of these things installed. But in the same way, our thoughts on this are that these organisations themselves are also going through an evolution. When they first launched, things like Hive and Nest, when they first launched, they were quite gadgety and aimed at early digital adopters who liked having a fun app that enabled them to turn a bath on when they were still walking home. But there's a very subtle shift in these things again towards supporting participation in this net zero world, and it's quite exciting. I made the comment earlier on that the digital world gets really exciting when people can start exchanging data between providers and moving data sets, and energy use is one of those interesting areas where Hive and Nest are getting more interesting, because you're beginning to be able to take data from them and look at it and give that data to your utility and let them think about it and do interesting things. So there's a general sense within the utilities and the energy world that the exchange of data is of a long-term benefit to the homeowners. We would caveat this with just making sure you know who is getting hold of your data. And when you sign up for one of these services, just make sure you check all the boxes that prevent them selling your data or passing it on to the outside world. But the data these things produce over the next few years will increasingly become part of our toolkit as homeowners to play in this new digital world. We quite like some of the new apps that are popping up to help us look at how we use energy around our home. And again, we have no affiliation with any of these companies. These are kind of the favourites in the Chimni office at the moment. They all do a similar-ish kind of thing. So Jewelbug and Smappy, they help you think about how you're using energy. And some of them have little bits of plugs you can plug in at home, but they're really good for beginning this dialogue around energy use. How we use energy and why we use energy, which rooms use energy, do we use energy in rooms where we don't use. So we would encourage people to at least download one and have a play and have a think about the data it produces. Again, our solutions in the short term seem to be more apps, so apologies for that, but over time these things will plug together better and they'll learn to exchange data better. So we would encourage playing with at least one of these. And just to move on, so the future. Now clearly those apps are kind of like the future, but the future seems to be crashing in at rapid speed on us, and so we have questions about where should we play and what we shouldn't. Now, this is going to be very much a kind of an opinion piece from us, so feel free to disagree if you disagree. We've broken the energy around some familiar themes we've touched on before around retrofit and energy use of smart home, but particularly around account management. So some thoughts from us. Retrofit is a phrase you'll hear more and more about over the next few years, and it's all part of the net zero campaign. The idea that those of us who manage homes, whatever the relationship with that home is, we are part of the way that the housing market is going to meet its net zero obligations over the next few years. And there are organisations starting to pop up, and we like EcoFurb for one of the things they're doing, that will come around to your home and do a survey and help you plan for how you participate in this. And they'll give you a little whole home planner thing. You can get grants for this. So this is all related to the stuff you'll have seen in the press over the last few weeks in lockdown, with the Chancellor giving out green grants to have work done. And what these companies are starting to do is enable you to plan it over the long term, so you don't have to do it straight away. Enable you to put it into context of your home, so that they'll come around and do a survey. And we like to talk about this as a kind of a super intelligent version of an EPC. And EcoVerb is just one of the organisations doing it. There's probably lots, and there'll be new ones popping up in Hounslow and other places soon. But the idea is to begin this dialogue of how we can plan long term for the homes we're responsible for, how those homes get up to net zero carbon use by 2035. So this is part of the long-term planning for the future. Smart meters. We talked about energy apps and energy use before. Smart meters there's a lot of noise about smart meters, and smart meters in the long term are a very exciting thing because of what I was saying before. As homeowners, it's always been hard to make decisions about this stuff without good information. It's very hard to monitor and manage your energy use if you have no idea what energy you're using. So as well as those apps we've seen, there's a rollout program the government's running around smart meters. Well, we have a couple of recommendations. One is to make sure you get the latest generation of smart meter if you consider one. We are pro smart meters as an organisation, and that's very much an opinion. We have no skin in the game. We don't have any relationship with smart meter companies, but we think in the long term these are very, very positive for our ability to manage energy consumption and hit our targets. As I say, make sure that if you're having one installed, it's a second generation. And the thing we would always stress is that try and get one that allows you access to the data. Doesn't just give you one of these toys to put on your kitchen counter. We think that the really interesting revolution coming out of smart meters is the new generation allow you to have a data feed. Now, most people wouldn't know what to do with a data feed, and to tell you the truth, nor would I, which is why I have a group of very smart devs who work for me, because I wouldn't be able to do it. But the idea is, over time, the data that comes out of your smart meter will be available for you to feed into apps of your choice. So those apps we talked about before will be able to take the smart data. So think about this as an amazing way of getting some great intelligence on the way that your home uses data, and start to think about what you might do with that data, with some help from some clever tech people if you've got them, or some clever smart apps like the ones we flagged up before. Smart home. Now, I'm very conscious that many of you, like us, will have stuck a new doorbell on that sends a video call to an app, or you may have a CCTV camera on your app. Now, this technology tends to divide people. There's some of us in the group who love it and just love it for the sake of it. There's other people who understandably are very wary about the rise of smart home and internet connected devices around your home. And again, so it's very hard to make a recommendation or offer thoughts which apply equally to everybody. But there's a few rules we like just to follow in this world. One is be careful what you buy. These things can be great fun, but there's a lot of concern at the moment about some of the devices that are coming onto the market from factories that don't necessarily adhere to strong security standards. And so we would always say, whatever it is you're buying, whether it's an internet connected doorbell or a CCTV camera, even a smart TV, make sure that you're buying something with a well-known brand, and not something that looks cheap but an unknown brand is a false economy in the world of smart home, because what we're discovering is that many smart home devices that come from cheaper brands are coming to market without any security. And so there are apps popping up, and a good one that we like is Connect Devices, that can help you check what's connected to the internet in your home and whether it has good security. So this particular service, Connect Devices, it talks to your internet router, and it can spot all the devices on your Wi-Fi network at home that are talking to the internet, and it can ping them to check the state of the security, and it gives you a little report on your phone, and it might say, oh, everything looks good apart from that internet connected baby monitor upstairs that doesn't have any security on it and is being monitored by hackers in China, or I make that up, but something along those lines. So we would always say, we like smart devices for the fun of them. We're always very cautious about the quality of the ones we buy and the way that they connect to our Wi-Fi. We always check on security, make sure that they have the right security protocols, and also when you see the T's and C's, make sure you can check where the data goes. Make sure you're buying devices that in the app on your phone give you a very clear opt-out from sharing data around your home. And a general comment about account management for the future. There will be some of you out there who are very cautious about installing smart home devices or apps or Hive or Nest, and that's completely understandable in this new world. And there'll be other people who are early adopters and like playing with it, who've ended up, like I have, with about 25 apps on my phone, all related to something to do with my home, all connected to the internet, all swapping data in some way. We always say to people, you have to be very cautious about the account details in each of these apps with the passwords you use. Now, if you can, and this may seem like a luxury, we actually favour setting up 2 Wi-Fi systems at home and having one just dedicated to your smart home things and one for all your emails and personal devices. That may seem like belt and braces to some people, and we understand it, but if you are a big user of smart home and Internet of Things devices, it may be something you want to consider. The second thing is, which is kind of a tidy and organizational thing, is you might opt to set all of your smart home devices up with a specific Gmail account made for your home. It, again, sounds kind of odd, but for my little semi-detached, we've set it up a Gmail account, and we set up all of our smart home devices using that Gmail account. So it's not using any of the same Gmail accounts as any of our personal stuff. It's kept very separate, and we change the password regularly. So our kind of broad comment with smart home devices is they're great fun. As I said on the previous slide, always go for the bigger name brands that have explicit security, because lots of the cheap ones don't, and keep your eye on the security. Use one of the apps like Create Devices, like we mentioned, to check on the security of these devices. Change the passwords often. And unfortunately, in this digital world, one of the downsides is that this is just another raft of things we have to manage in our homes. But if you want to play with the smart devices, it's absolutely crucial to make sure that you are active, monitoring the accounts and monitoring the passwords and the security. And that really was all we wanted to talk about. We talked about the past, how to access Who's Got Archive. We talked about the present, what should we be doing today with the council, what should we be doing today with the land registry, and the other services we might be playing with in our homes. And we touched on a little bit about the future and the way it could play. As I say, we like to think this picture is a hopeful vision of the future, that there's better, new, interesting services coming because of our ability to share data with our home and all the service providers around us. So I know some people can find it daunting, but I do think that we as homeowners, as residents, will be better off because of this new digital kind of shared data world, and it's quite exciting. And that's us. So that's what we do. We are obviously, little advert at the end, last slide. We hopefully will be part of the solution for tidying all this stuff up in the future, but hopefully you'll hear more about us over the next year. And everyone home needs a chimney. More importantly, enjoy this new future digital world, because it's very exciting and there's lots of fun to come. And that was everything I was going to talk about.
Nigel, thank you so much for that. That's brilliant. Really interesting. Loads of really practical advice as well for people to take away and digest. So that's fantastic, and it's certainly something that I hadn't really thought about in terms of that sort of setting your house up with a Gmail account, and that sort of cyber security element of things is absolutely essential for us all to be thinking about. We think about it quite a lot in our work lives, but maybe not enough in our home lives. So some real useful hints and tips there. So thank you for that. And it was a really interesting piece there about you were talking about Hive, the sort of nudge theory of some of this this new technology is really interesting. So I was one of those people that got it installed early, and it was very probably lazy is the word, to turn on the heating without having to stand up. But now that sort of nudge theory and getting emails from Hive saying, well, the temperature of your home for this month was higher or lower than the average in your area. So real personalised local data and information, I think is really interesting, and I think that's where I can see some of it going. So I think that's going to be really interesting about how that progresses. So just a sort of couple of thoughts and sort of questions for you, I suppose. Really, how do you think that this whole sort of COVID crisis, if you like, the pandemic, has changed the need for this sort of data at home? Do you think it has changed it? Or you're on mute, Nigel. That's a phrase that we hear a lot of, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's changed it a couple of ways. I think because more of us are working from home, we're more conscious of our homes in a 24-hour way. Many of us, walk out the door early in the morning, go to an office, and don't come home till the evening. So we don't necessarily have this view of our home 7 days a week, 24 hours. And I think it's given us a view of that, and made us much more conscious about heating cycles through the day. So there's a different sense of our home. But also because of things like this, video conferencing, we've been forced to learn some tech. There are people like my parents on Zoom calls now who could barely use an iPad before lockdown. So I think these weird occurrences, there's also obviously lots of dreadful negative in them, but there is some weird upside as well. And this being incredibly digitally literate is coming out of it. And part of that is a longer term trend. I think we were talking the other day about something. I know it sounds an odd thing, council parking. Almost never kept walking around with cash anymore because because the council's introduced the facility to pay with my phone. It has some people who struggle with it, but for most of us, it's a liberation. And so what we're looking for out of COVID and out of all this change are more occasions like that where some digital tech innovation can deliver something which is just an everyday brilliant win. And so we're looking for the 20 more examples of the parking example to come out of this stuff.
And you sort of touched upon my second question there, in terms of that sort of digital inclusion piece. So I think you're right; it has absolutely accelerated people's knowledge and people's use of technology and so on. But often, if you are digitally excluded, we don't want to leave people behind. So we want to make sure that everything that we do is absolutely accessible by all. And there's a range of work that we're doing as a council in terms of making sure people have access to skills, the right skills, the right hardware, the right connectivity. Yeah. But you touched upon yourself. So how do we make sure that people aren't left behind by this new sort of technology for the home?
Yeah, it's a really difficult challenge. We're conscious of it. Just in that parking meter debate, we're conscious that one of the grandparents in our family doesn't have a smartphone and now feels he can't drive to the high road and park on the high road because he And so we're conscious of that digital exclusion, even as the rest of the family are reveling in this new tech. One member clearly isn't. My glib answer is actually I always look to organisations like the council. You know, in the commercial startup world, we're terrible at it. You know, as someone who runs a small tech startup, I'm very conscious we're the worst offenders of, you know, we will define this amazing new digital revolution and plough ahead without thinking about the broader community. Working with Chimni has kind of brought me down to earth on this. We've done lots and lots of focus groups about the way people use data in the home, and we've been given a kind of a salutary lesson about how cautious people are about data around their home, and we actually changed the design of Chimney very early on because it looked like, you know, a spaceship, and people didn't think about their home that way. And so we literally had to redesign the whole thing to start again, because we'd miscued how not just digitally literate people were, but how they perceived themselves and their homes in this kind of emerging and future world. And most people didn't want the rocket ship. They just wanted some gentle help to go from step 1 to step 2. And so from my part, I would focus on language. As I say, I look to the councils are much better at it than us kind of tech startup people, but we've tempered our language. First of all, don't speak as though you expect everyone to use this stuff. And we were bad at it. You know, we just spoke as though everyone would naturally understand what we were doing and would want it. But actually, most people aren't making those leaps because they've got their lives to lead. So part of us was language. Don't speak like people are going to want it. Don't assume they understand what you're talking about or have seen the connections you think you've made. So it's been really sobering, this project, for us in dealing with it.
I think that's really interesting, actually, because it's easier to throw technology out there and expect people know how to use it, but the fact that you're asking people, you're running focus groups and so on, I think is a really important in that design process, isn't it? And certainly as a council in our own services, and you mentioned the sort of our online services earlier on, we want to do more of that sort of stuff, so involve the community in that creation of whatever those services are. And I think, you know, the more you can do that and keep it as simple as possible, and I think that's really important. So a final question for me. We're keeping an eye on the Q&A, so if anybody does have any questions, do shout. Lots of people very keen to get hold of the slides and the information and the links, certainly, that we went through on the presentation, and there's some fantastic links there. So we will be sharing them after the event, absolutely. But a sort of final question from me, whilst people, if they've got any burning questions, to type them in the Q&A, that'd be great. Otherwise, a final question for me in terms of that. And again, you alluded to it in the presentation, in terms of that trust around data. It is really, really important that we maintain, that we develop, we get that trust from our residents, our communities in that data, and not just as a council, but also as a sort of as yourselves as a company. So what are the tips that you've done, I suppose, in terms of helping people be more trustworthy in the data that's out there? How do we do that?
It's a really interesting challenge, and we obviously have to be aware that because we spend our day reveling in this stuff, we just assume lots of people know what we know. And the open data revolutions, you know, when we talk about it, we're all buoyed up and enthused by this idea, but actually that can be a very scary thing for a lot of people. We did some focus groups in a conservation area, and we had a map that with some data we'd pulled from the land registry, sorry, from Historic England, and some of the people in the focus groups were absolutely angry about us putting their home on a map, and we had to kind of explain to them that it wasn't our data. All we had done was taken data which was publicly available from Historic England. They were then angry that Historic England was circulating data about their home, and it kind of cascaded. This focus group kind of went off because, you know, we had misunderstood even the starting point of the discussion. And we just thought, wouldn't these people be excited for us to show them how much information is already about their home on the web? And all they did was then they were less trusting of us, because we'd done this thing. And so we're very conscious that trust starts with both language, as I've said, but also I think that the psychologists would call it empathy. That, you know, starting with a viewpoint of where the people you're dealing with are starting from as well, and how they perceive data. Every time there is a data breach, whether it's Sony or Yahoo, it's a disaster for people like us, yourselves and us, trying to introduce new digital services. We're conscious that there is a drumbeat of this stuff in the press, and so we have to manage expectations very, very carefully. But as I say, empathy, a very kind of non-tech word I do recognise, starting where people are in their heads and in their perception of stuff, and helping them along that journey is the way we would say to build trust. And only because we've made some terrible mistakes in the early part of Chimni, stumbling around thinking we were building this amazing shiny thing that everyone wanted.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Nigel. There's a question that's come through on the chat here. I'll read it out. So, when someone dies, the executors of their will need to contact several organisations regarding the deceased. Is there a website that acts as a one-stop shop that can be used to inform organisations in one go? Are you aware of such a thing?
I'm sitting here having seen something similar, but unfortunately some of the legal requirements to inform involve face-to-face, so it's not possible to do everything 100% online. I don't know the answer to that question, but I will find out, and if I can find out, I'll get it added into the slides. But I have seen somebody who tried to do something, because it's a little bit similar to a service when you move home. There are websites now where you can put your address in, the old one and the new one, and they will do lots of the informing, etc. But with estates, I do believe that there's some legal requirements for face-to-face and signing face-to-face that have to be done, so you can't do 100%. It's a great question, though. So.
Brilliant. And I guess that's part of the there's lots, and maybe the sort of COVID pandemic can help us in some of that, in terms of processes, laws, legislation that doesn't help some of the sort of online world. Yeah. So I think putting pressure, I suppose, back in to change some of those more traditional ways of doing things, I think probably would be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and we're seeing that in the home buying and selling market. They've been through the process of digitizing the existing process, which is still a disaster, and now they're talking about actually radically changing the process by which we buy homes, and that's the true exciting part of a digital revolution. Not just digitizing the old ways, but then going to the next stage, which is reinventing.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm conscious that we're coming to the hour, so there's no more questions in there. I think I just want to sort of end then. So to thank you for your presentation this afternoon. I think it's given us a lot to go away and think about our own personal lives and our homes and what we can do differently. A wealth of information that we'll provide in the various links and information that you shared. So we will share that for people watching this afternoon, and some fun and games with slides at the beginning, and even an appearance by the chief executive as well. I think this has been an awesome session.
We've done everything.
We've done it all. We've done it all this afternoon. But seriously, Nigel, thank you for taking the time out this afternoon to be part of the digital festival, and joining us this afternoon. Really educational. I've learned stuff, lots to go away and think about. So just wanted to thank you finally on behalf of everybody here to be part of it this afternoon. So thank you. And there's more sessions for the rest of the week, and we will make these available online as well. So for the meantime, thank you, Nigel, and goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.